going to be set up exactly the same for the sports psychologist talk. So if you're interested in the sports psychologist talks in this room, feel free to just stay in this room, and vice versa. You can hop between the other breakout rooms depending on which talk you're interested in. Also, one thing to note is over this lunchtime period, we are going to keep these rooms open, and that's just to facilitate any networking and things like that. So if there was any interested in the talk, you were interested in, feel free to hop into the rooms that they may be in. You can see that just by clicking on the breakout button and seeing who's in those rooms. So do feel free to jump into there and see if they're about, and you can ask more questions and get contact details and things like that as well. But other than that, I'll see you all at 1:15. Hope you have a nice little lunch break, and I'll see you in a bit.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me, first of all, to this presentation today. Hope you're all enjoying the conference so far. So yeah, my name's Harry Warburton. I'm a lecturer in sports coaching and development at the University of the West of Scotland, and alongside Professor Matt Slater from Staffordshire University, during the second national lockdown in 2021, we conducted an applied intervention which was about exploring the influence of relationship-orientated personal disclosure, mutual sharing on facets of team functioning among academy soccer coaches. Now, before we go into the detail in terms of what this intervention looked like, and more importantly, what we found, I think it's maybe important I give you a bit of context into what exactly PDMS is. So PDMS stands for Personal Disclosure Mutual Sharing. PDMS is a communication-orientated intervention which encourages individuals to publicly disclose unknown information amongst one another in order to augment changes to individual level and group level psychological constructs. Now, traditionally, there are 4 types of PDMS at the moment. The most common form is relationship-orientated PDMS, which encourages individuals to disclose a personal narrative that's perhaps influenced their career or their personal life, and has been found to have an influence on developing rapport and understanding, as well as social emotional bonds, and has been seen as something that can really help enhance social identity and perceptions of friendships within a group. Secondly, you also have mastery-orientated PDMS, which is where individuals prepare and subsequently disclose a narrative pertaining to best performance and has been useful for enhancing self-efficacy, but when shared in a group setting can enhance perceptions of collective efficacy. Thirdly, you have coping-orientated PDMS, which was developed by Evans and colleagues in 2019 and is used for appraisal systems when faced with a transition. So it's been really useful for academy settings where players perhaps have been coming to the end of a contract and are unsure of if they're going to get that renewed. So it helps them to appraise the resources that they may have to cope with the demands, and also understand that it might not be the end of the world should they not get that contract. And that brings me on to the last type of PDMS, which is rational emotive PDMS. Now, this is an adjunct form of PDMS which would be used alongside REBT therapy. Individuals would usually go through one-to-one REBT consultation or group workshops before coming to an REBT PDMS session, where they would openly discuss their understanding of REBT principles. So essentially, PDMS facilitates mutual understanding and peer appreciation through an emotionally evocative process of personal disclosure and reflective listening, and is very similar to what you would find in a self-help group. Now, in relation to our specific intervention, we were approached by the head of the academy from the female academy football club in question during the second national lockdown. I think it was about February 2021 or end of January. And at this time, they were concerned about the welfare of their coaches, given that there'd been a lot of support to the players themselves during the first lockdown. They wanted to make sure that they were also supporting their coaches. So through conducting some needs analysis procedures, we were able to ascertain that the coaches were unable to do a lot of things at the moment due to the physical restrictions in play, but they weren't able to do the one thing that they intrinsically loved, which was coach football. They also had concerns regarding the players' development due to the physical restrictions in play, whilst also having many concerns regarding their personal and social friend groups due to the novel threat posed by COVID-19. We also found that there was a lack of social interaction amongst the coaches across the academy setup, with the coaches predominantly only really interacting with their coaching team, whether that be from the under-9s all the way up to the top of the setup at the under-19s. So we believe the actual physical restrictions in place actually provided a novel opportunity for us to create an online relationship-orientated personal disclosure mutual sharing session, which would allow the staff to reconnect to or even connect to their coaching peers at a time when perhaps they hadn't valued social relationships just as much as they did at that time. So essentially, we invited all the academy coaches to take part in this intervention, and we asked them to prepare a 5-minute disclosure in relation to the following instructions. Now, the first instruction was to encourage individuals to demonstrate why they coach football and what they think they bring to the coaching team. So this was a nice kind of easy opportunity for them, get them to demonstrate why they should be seen as an asset to the team. Whereas the second instruction is more focused towards relationship building and demonstrating a sense of understanding that might help to debunk preconceptions individuals might have of their teammates in team settings. So as you can see on your screen now, in the highlighted icons, we have the procedures that we delivered. So 2 weeks prior to the delivery of this online session, we had a 10-minute Zoom call with all the coaches who were subsequently about to go into a different CPD session. They were given a heads up in terms of what this session would consist of, provided the participant information sheet, and given 2 weeks to provide consent should they wish to. We also informed them that the head of the academy would also be participating at this time. Given that I didn't know the coaches and hadn't really worked at the academy before, this was a useful way to get buy-in, and as the coach was really keen on this idea, it was seen as a positive step to take. The actual session itself was delivered 2 weeks after in an online setting on Zoom. It lasted an hour and a half, and 13 out of 24 of the available staff participated. Now, granted, we would have liked more to participate, but unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions, some individuals were unable to participate due to being ill and having work commitments, while some may not have participated due to it being online. We just don't know. But I think we were quite fortunate to get 13 in the end. The head of the academy also participated and was the first to share their disclosure. In order to complement our procedure, I also screened every story prior to delivery. So 1 week prior to the PDMS session in question, I met every individual on a 10-minute Zoom call to get an idea of essentially what they were planning to disclose. Now, this wasn't for me to try and influence what they wanted to say, but it was just a support mechanism to get an idea of how they felt about taking part and to make sure that they were saying what they essentially wanted to. During this process, I was also able to identify that none of the disclosures would cause any ethical concern to themselves or others. So this was obviously a very pleasing procedure to go through. We gathered data across 4 different time points, 2 prior to the intervention to enhance internal validity concerns. For example, if there was no significant differences across our baselines and that then followed significant differences immediately after PDMS, we'd have quite a bit of confidence to suggest that it was the intervention itself that would cause such change. So we had 2 baselines, and then we gathered the 3rd time point immediately after PDMS, and 1 month after as well, to take us to the 4th time point. We gathered data across a battery of social identity variables, social identity being the main one, which was captured in 3 different variables of in-group ties, which essentially is perceptions of bonds affiliated with a group, cognitive centrality, which is the meaningfulness assigned to that group, as well as in-group effect, which is the positive feelings individuals may assign to their group. We also measured friendship identity content as a potential reason as to why they may identify with their coaching academy team, and also variables that are perhaps seen as outcomes of social identity, such as self-esteem and social support. You'll also see this word non-equivalent dependent variable, which was our last variable that we attached in our survey. Now, unlike the other variables which were targeted and were theorized to obviously be influenced by PDMS, the non-equivalent dependent variable was not. Okay, so we didn't expect this variable to change, and this was based on the low frustration tolerance subscale from the irrational performance beliefs inventory. Now, this gave us some confidence that if there was no change in that variable and there were subsequent changes in the other targeted variables, then again, this would give us more confidence in the effectiveness of the intervention. Now, this was useful given that we didn't have access to a control group. Likewise, to alleviate internal validity concerns, social validation or qualitative data was gathered immediately and 4 weeks after the intervention in the follow-up surveys to give us an understanding of the perceived experience of the intervention, as well as the coach's perceived effectiveness of said intervention. Now, in relation to our results, our psychometric results found that for the social identity findings that you can see on the scale to your left, hopefully, there was no significant changes across baseline 1 and baseline 2, which was good for us. That was then followed by a significant increase in in-group ties. So the perception of bonds significantly increased directly after relationship-orientated PDMS. Now, this is understandable given that PDMS enhances perceptions of rapport and understanding, and as well as this, due to the session itself encouraging individuals to understand their peers, this was kind of expected. We also found a significant medium increase in cognitive centrality, which could be due to the narratives that were disclosed. Quite a few of the participants spoke about an academy mantra, which might have enhanced the saliency of the perceptions of the actual academy group itself, which could explain such changes. We did, however, to the right, find that across baseline 1 and baseline 2 for friendship identity content, there was a significant large decrease, which wasn't expected, but could be due to an artifact of being in the lockdown for such a long period of time. This was then followed by a significant medium increase in friendship identity content immediately after PDMS, which again, perhaps is due to the narratives that were disclosed and the sense of rapport, respect, perhaps, that was developed during PDMS. No significant changes were found for our other variables, but most positively, no significant change was found for our non-equivalent dependent variable, which is what we hypothesized, which was good news, and that gave us some confidence that the significant changes that I've reported here were perhaps more likely due to the intervention itself and not due to perhaps other reasons. Now, accompanying the psychometric results, we have our qualitative social validation data. Now, the themes that you can see here were demonstrated based on the acute and the 4-week follow-up. Now, they demonstrate that there were 3 key themes for those 2 phases: emotional and cognitive reactions, which demonstrated that before PDMS, there was a lot of apprehension still, even with adult academy coaches that publicly speak. However, they did advocate that the screening procedure did help with that process. Post-PDMS, individuals affiliated the experience with a sense of pride, which was good to hear. And enhanced understanding and improved togetherness was, again, common findings for face-to-face experiences. The one kind of sub-theme that was questionable, or not questionable, was interesting to find, was the applied impact. Now, given that 4 weeks after the intervention itself, the coaches were still in the lockdown and found it obviously hard to see if this had an impact on the face-to-face running of their academy. So the findings are basically online ROPDMS provides coaches an opportunity to enhance their perceptions of bonds, the meaningfulness that they assign to their group, as well as the perceptions of friendship in that group. Now, compared to face-to-face delivery, online ROPDMS appears to facilitate similar cognitive and emotional reactions, which seem to be supported through screening procedures in order to alleviate any unnecessary anxiety. So the findings here help to demonstrate that online PDMS perhaps is not a weaker form of PDMS and could be really useful for practitioners or teams that are facing geographical limitations. Thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now.
Excellent work. Thank you very much, Harry. That's very interesting. And I now know what ROPDMS stands for as well. So every day's a school day.
That's it.
Do we have any questions from the floor? Yeah, Tom, feel free to jump on the mic.
Yeah, I've got just a research kind of question. If you'd had a control group, what would that have looked like?
Yeah, so again, that is a good point. Control groups are something that are lacking from PDMS literature in general. But given the ethical concerns of trying to withhold an intervention from a control, I think we would have probably delivered a staggered approach where you'd have probably delivered PDMS with both groups, but just at different times. And then obviously maybe more of a crossover design where you'd have maybe had the first group deliver PDMS, whilst the second group was maybe acting as a baseline, and then you'd kind of swap over, if that makes sense, Tom.
Yeah, I was just my sort of on the hoof thoughts, just having a meeting of the coaches just to chat.
Yeah,
so that kind of online presence, whether that would have had just getting them together had an impact on these variables that you measured.
Sorry, say that again, Tom.
Whether or not just the fact that you had these coaches online together had an impact on the variables that you measured.
Yeah, possibly. They were meeting online once a week anyway.
Right. Okay.
So we did obviously have the two baselines which mitigated that, but yeah, that they could have been talking in more sessions in between the intervention, but I don't think there was much more.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions from the floor? Definitely got time for more questions, so if anyone's got them. Maybe one from Stuart Mitchell here. It's hard to get a feel for what PDMS actually is and looks like. Does the skill of the person delivering it matter?
Yes. To answer that question, yeah, it's obviously a difficult intervention to design, to deliver. On the face of it, it can look quite easy, but given that you're in a position where an individual can disclose anything, you need to obviously be strong-armed with referral processes should an individual disclose something that might incriminate them or someone else. So there is a level of risk, as there is with any kind of intervention of a group nature. So yes, in order to deliver PDMS, it's strongly advised that you are under the supervision of a chartered sports psychologist or R1, really. Yeah.
Excellent. Anybody else? Probably got time for one more. Anybody's got one? I've got a question, and it kind of follows on the back of what you just said there. Yeah. Were there any significant challenges in implementing this intervention, and how did you overcome those? Yeah,
so there were significant challenges prior to this study in terms of, I don't know if that would really answer your question, but for this specific study, it surprisingly went well, given that it had never really been delivered online before. And I think a huge part of that is due to the buy-in from the head of the academy. They were really supportive. They facilitated a lot of the opportunities to speak with the players in an online fashion. So, for example, the screening procedure, they used their academy kind of Zoom account and held like a meeting room, whilst I would then individually go in and have a chat with each individual person, whilst they kind of held forth, speaking to other members of the participants. So without them, you know, it would have been a lot more challenging. So yeah, I think that just highlights the importance of having a good working relationship with the key stakeholders.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Fantastic. That was a really interesting talk there, Harry. I think next up we have got David Charlton. Is David Charlton there?
Yes, I am, yes.
Hello. Are you able to share your screen?
I certainly can, yeah. Give me 1 second.
Okay, fantastic. So just a tiny bit of housekeeping. It's obviously a 15-minute talk with 5 minutes of questions. I've got some signs, so keep an eye out for the signs. Hopefully you can get me fixed on a screen so you can see them. So I'll give you a 2-minute sign and then a time's up sign. Other than that, we're pretty much ready to go. So I'll pass over to you, David, and the title of your talk is Performing Under Pressure.
Excellent, yeah, thank you for the opportunity. So yeah, I'm